Whoa, wait a second. How did you find this? All right, I guess since you're here, welcome to the first episode of Soup's Secret Show. This is something new I've been wanting to try for a while now. It's going to be kind of a bonus show or a podcast where I talk through whatever's been on my mind lately. Quick heads up, this episode was originally posted on Patreon. If you want to get future episodes a week early and completely ad-free, you can join for just $2 a month using the first link in the description. So thanks for checking this out. Today, I'm diving into a bunch of stuff. I'm going to get into what my next bike might be and why I'm kind of over my 125 right now. I also want to talk about why I mainly just leave my bike stock, and I honestly think most people should too. We're also going to talk about hard enduro, which I've been getting more and more obsessed with. And I want to share this one crazy stat from Erzberg that absolutely blew my mind. Additionally, I've got some thoughts on this year's pro motocross season. The Jet versus Tomac battle, Deegan's dominance, Kobush talking trash, and a few underdogs I've been keeping my eye on. And then, to wrap it all up, I'm going to be answering a bunch of your questions from Instagram, YouTube, and TikTok. I got questions about beginner tips, tire choices, the worst wrecks I've ever had, so you're not going to want to miss that. Just so you know, if you want to skip around, I've got timestamps for each segment listed in the description. Now, some quick housekeeping before we get started. I once again want to thank you for giving this show a try. It really helps keep the channel alive so I can keep bringing you the stuff you guys want to see. Now, aside from subscribing to this show here on Patreon, there are a few other ways you can support Soup Moto. First off, just watching and engaging with my videos over on YouTube helps a ton. But if you do feel like donating, you can actually do so straight through YouTube by clicking the thanks button below the videos over there. I finally got shirts made. They're available for purchase now. You can find them through the link in the description. They're super high quality union made shirts, screen printed right here in Pittsburgh, PA by my friends over at Commonwealth Press. So check that link out to grab yours now. I'm also a Motosport affiliate. So if you have a bunch of bike parts or riding gear or accessories that you're already planning on buying, you can click the Motosport link in the description below. You can then fill up your cart with whatever you want, and when you purchase, I'll earn a small commission at no extra cost to you. I'm also partnered with Dango Designs. So if you're looking to record your rides and you want the best POV out there, you can grab yourself a gripper chin mount through the link below. And lastly, I also have a discount code for all Cardo products. So if you were already thinking about buying a Cardo to maybe listen to music while you ride or chat with your buddies during those long enduro loops, you can use code SOUP, S-O-U-P, at checkout for 10% off. Without further ado, let's dive on in to the secret show. All right, I hope you guys enjoyed that little intro. As you can see, I'm playing MX bikes. I'm not going to be playing it the whole time. We're also going to dive into my web browser and kind of look at some different stats of bikes and stuff. So don't worry, the show's not going to be all MX bikes. There's going to be some other stuff as well. And in future shows, I'll try to include, maybe some real riding footage. It's going to be pretty varied. But for now, I'm playing MX bikes. This is a game I really enjoy. And I'm playing on the track Rancho Cordova, which is basically Hangtown, I think, in real life. And I'm going to be trying to play this while we talk here for a small portion of the segment, and then we'll get into some other stuff, like I said. So the first sort of topic I want to dive into is why I keep my bikes stock. Like I said, I don't really do a whole lot of mods. I get a lot of questions about mods a lot, but the truth of the matter is I've never really been one to modify my bikes heavily. I've always kind of kept them stock, and that might be a mystery to a lot of you guys because, like I said, I get a ton of questions all the time talking about, what mods do I do, and a bunch of people answer. I kind of take it that a lot of you guys and other people in general also kind of heavily modify their bikes a lot, but I'm not really someone who likes to do that. And there's a couple reasons why. First off, it's not that I don't do any mods, it's just I mainly don't do like engine mods. I don't do any power mods or that sort of thing. So and the reason is because I just don't really think it's worth it for most riders. But I'll kind of dive a little deeper into that as I talk about more specific mods. And I guess a good way to talk about this would be, what mods do I recommend? Because, like I said, it's not that I don't mod my bikes at all. I do put some aftermarket parts on, but I just kind of shy away from the power mods. So some mods that I would do are, first off, things like, I mean, this is one of the most important things, is suspension. Because if you're like way outside of the weight range that the bike recommends for that, stock spring rate, it's not going to feel too good. For example, when I was young, I first got my YZ125, and I was pretty light. I was a skinny dude, and so I actually fell under the sort of weight range for the YZ125. So I ended up going with a lighter spring rate. But nowadays, I've gained a lot more weight. I'm heavier than I was when I first got the bike. I mean, that's been over 10 years ago now, and I'm an adult now. So I actually recently upped the spring rate back to the factory settings on the YZ125. And it definitely makes a huge difference. You won't find yourself bottoming out. Or if you're on the lighter side, it won't be like stiff as a board, not going anywhere, making for like a really rough ride. So if you're outside of the weight range on either end of your like stock spring rate, that's one mod that I would definitely recommend changing. And this is something that comes into play on things like the CRF 250F, the trail bike. A lot of people complain about its suspension. And yeah, I mean, it's not the most advanced suspension, of course, but one of the things that you could do to really like fix that is just get a heavier spring. Because what people are talking about a lot of times with that bike is, well, the suspension can't really handle aggressive riding. And that's definitely true due to its components to some degree, but that's also just because it's not as stiff of a spring rate. So if you get stiffer springs, it'll be able to absorb a lot of those rougher bumps and more aggressive riding. This is something I've not done yet on my CRF 250F trail bike, but my buddy did do it on his, and it made a world of difference. So it's definitely something I would consider doing in the future. The other thing is, this is like stuff that I've never really done because I grew up riding motocross, but it's like protection parts. Okay, so like hand guards, skid plate, radiator and rotor guards, that sort of thing. Now these are things that I would recommend doing depending on the type of riding you're doing. For motocross, a lot of this stuff might not be necessarily something that everyone like has to do, but for woods riding, like if you're doing any sort of aggressive trail riding, or I don't know, like tight single track, stuff like that, I mean, handguards are a must. Now, I broke my finger, and I never used to run handguards, like, ever, and that got me into running at least the MX, like, plastic flag handguards. I'm still not on the train of getting those, like, full metal wraparound bark busters, just because I still do ride on the motocross track sometimes, and I don't want to be, like, hitting jumps and having my hand go through and breaking my wrist or something. But for people who solely ride in the woods or like off-road, I would highly recommend getting like the metal wraparound bark busters, because they do save your levers as well. But anyway, like I said, if you ride like a hybrid of stuff, at least just get the plastic ones, because they do make a big difference, and you can like hit into trees. Obviously not like full bore, you can't smack a tree and be perfectly fine, but if you're just like bumping off of trees, or like you have thick brush you got to get through, having the handguards just makes it a lot nicer. Plus on the motocross track with like roost, rocks, that sort of thing coming off other bikes, honestly, I don't know why more people don't run them. That's one big thing that I would definitely recommend. And then, like I said, all the other protection parts, like, you got the skid plate, you got the radiators, radiator guards, I guess, like, they make these like welded ones, or I guess some of them you can probably just bolt on to strengthen up your radiators so they don't bend. That's a really big thing. My radiators on my 125 are like bent really badly. But yeah, I mean, like radiator braces, rotor guards, any other protection parts, skid plate, really useful. I'm just kind of rambling at this point, so I'll move on to the next point, which I also think another good mod is choosing the right tires for the terrain you're on, which I almost wouldn't even consider like a mod. This is just kind of something you should do no matter what, because tires are a wear item. You're always going through tires, and you're always, I mean, unless you only ride one thing and you never go anywhere else, you're going to be changing up. Like, unless you're doing that, you're going to be changing up the terrain you ride on. So you're going to want to change your tire compound, tread pattern, all that stuff. And so that's something I would definitely recommend, obviously. And then recently, since I've started off-road riding more, would be like mooses, running like a sort of tubeless, not actual tubeless, but like those foam inserts that make it so you can't get pinch flats, and like, you know, you're not popping a tube and ruining your ride. So those are things that I highly would recommend as far as mods. But things that I wouldn't recommend, like I said, are mainly like power mods, engine mods. I'm talking about things like exhaust. Really, unless you're trying to do something like maybe take a 2-stroke MX bike and turn it into a woods bike, you might want to like a pipe that gives you a little more low end. I mean, unless you're doing something like that that has like a purpose reason, getting a pipe, I mean, it's case by case, but I really don't see the need in doing it. Now, like I said, it depends. If you got one of those bikes that's like corked up from the factory, let's say like the CRF 300 L, and you want to do like a pipe and an ECU, I mean, that's one thing. That's like a case by case thing. But for the most part, if you already have a race bike, you don't really need to get a pipe, in my opinion. And that goes for other engine mods like ECU, cams, boring it out to a bigger cylinder, porting and polishing of the ports and stuff. All that stuff, I mean, like I said, there's a time and a place for it. If you're competitively racing, that's one thing. But I think for most people who are just riding for fun, or especially those like beginners who are just getting into riding and like still learning how the bike works and how the power works, how to manipulate it, and, you know, body position, all that stuff, those things are like fundamentals that if you're changing the power of your bike, you're kind of using it as a handicap almost, and it's not going to help you in the long run. It's definitely not going to help you learn any of those fundamentals. And also, you're probably just going to be like doing stuff that you don't necessarily understand the outcome of like why you're making the change. You won't be able to like feel the difference in a way. And it's, in my opinion, it's not going to be like a net positive for you. I don't know how the hell I landed that like whip there. But the other thing is, I guess another case by case thing for why you might want to do engine mods is if you're someone who just likes mechanical stuff and you like to tinker, then okay, that's perfectly fine. I understand why you'd want to do engine mods then. And like, if that's part of the fun for you, like working on the bike, by all means, like do whatever engine mods you want, make some crazy modified race build. That's like part of it as well. That's just not how I get my enjoyment out of dirt bikes. I prefer just to ride and not ever really do maintenance on my bike, even though it's evil necessity. I don't get like enjoyment out of doing that stuff. So I sure as shit am not going to be doing like engine mods that I don't really need to do. And also, with that being said, like the other stuff, like the suspension, well, suspension's difficult and you need specialized tools to do that a lot of times. But the other stuff, like the protection, like hand guards, skid plates, all that stuff's always usually like bolt on. So basically any Joe Schmo can like do it with a set of ratchets and maybe like a screwdriver or something. Like it's not engine work that's like way above your pay grade, so to speak. So yeah, I mean, long story short, that's basically why I keep my bike stock. I don't know. Mileage may vary. Some people might not agree with me, and that's perfectly fine. If you have another reason why you like to do engine mods and power mods, feel free to drop it in the comments. It's just, that's my personal preference, and that's why when you ask me about mods, I'm probably not going to talk about engine mods. It's just not something that I really get into. I think you should probably learn to use the stock power of the bike first. So that's pretty much that. Now, the other thing I wanted to talk about was hard enduro. So actually, if you've never watched, any hard enduro race or Erzberg or Red Bull Romaniacs, I guess let's watch a little bit right now. All right, so this right here is the Red Bull Erzberg Rodeo 2025. I'm gonna have this link to this video here linked in the show notes below, so you can watch it if you want. But as you can see, this is hard enduro right here. Now, this is taking place in Austria. I believe it's part of the European hard enduro circuit. And to be honest, since I grew up riding motocross, I pretty much never, ever considered hard enduro or enduro in general. Like, obviously, I kind of knew it existed, but I like never considered it as something that I would ever like participate in or be interested in any way. I was kind of indoctrinated into this motocross only mindset. Um, so yeah, I don't know. I never got into it, but recently, since I got the CRF 250F, I've been riding woods like all year long for the past year and a half now at this point, probably. I did my first ever hare scramble race, and I've been riding with my buddy who does woods racing, and also he did the Tennessee Knockout last year. So he's done a little bit of hard enduro, and so I've been kind of dipping my toes in, right? And the more I do it, the more I realize I don't have the skill set to know how to do this stuff. So I've been researching it more, and I've been watching, and I've followed these guys that you see here on screen, different pros on Instagram, and just watching their videos and stuff has got me really interested in the sport of hard enduro. And I mean, we can skip around a little bit here. Let's see if there's any like super technical stuff, and you can kind of see what I'm talking about. But oh, nice. We'll get an ad. 1 second. All right. So as you can see here, this is like very technical stuff. And, as you watch it on screen, I mean, just think about all of the, first off, endurance, like, and strength it takes to do some of this stuff. But at the same time, just like rider technique. This is stuff coming from motocross that is like completely foreign to me. Like, I've never had this sort of technique, and it's really interesting. So anyway, like I said, I've been researching it, and recently it led me to watching the Erzberg Rodeo. So I watched a good majority of this like 4-hour race, and it's incredible, dude. Like, first off, there are I think like tons of riders, way more than the 500 who actually qualify for it in the end. Probably like thousands that do these prologues, and they try to qualify for this day here that you're watching. And so they narrow it down to 500 riders, which is crazy. But then only a small percent of them finish the race. I'm talking super, super small percent, like very small. Like I said, starts with 500, and after we talk about it a little bit here, we're going to talk about how many finished and who they were this year's race. But I just want to talk about some of the notable riders. We have Carson Brown, who is a supercross racer. If you don't know who he is, you should follow him on Instagram. He's awesome. He rides basically any type of bike out there, whether it's like a mini bike or a 300 two-stroke, and he just rides it wide open. They're like incredible videos to watch. He makes riding look so fun and enjoyable. But he did this race last year, and he only made it to, I believe it was stage 9, which is Carl's Dinner. And this year he did it again. I'm pretty sure he got through Carl's Dinner. But it was just so cool to watch someone coming from like a motocross and supercross background do so well in this event. And it even kind of stokes the flames for me even more. Like, it makes me want to try this really gnarly hard enduro stuff out. Another notable one is Johnny Walker. As you can see here, most of these guys are running two-strokes. Look at that big fat two-stroke pipe right there. Most of these guys are running like two-stroke 300 enduro bikes. And Johnny Walker, he signed with Triumph this year. They don't have a two-stroke, so he's been ripping the 254 stroke, which is pretty cool. I'm pretty sure he ended up doing pretty good. Like I said, we'll check the top finishers in a second here. But Then you have, so, I mean, these riders are all incredible. Then you have these two just absolute standouts, which is Billy Bolt and Manny Lettenbichler. And these guys are on a freaking another level. Like I said, 500 riders start, and somehow these guys get out way ahead of everybody else. And look at all this technical terrain and stuff, and they're like 10 minutes plus ahead of the next like pack of, third, fourth, fifth, and sixth place. Like they are so far ahead. And I know it's based on like, the position that you started in, and if you can get out in front early, then you obviously have a head start through all this technical stuff, but it's just incredible what like the gap between the top like 10 guys and then these two like complete outstanding people at the top. I just don't really understand it. So let's take a look at the finishes, and keep in mind the number 500. Okay, 500 is how many starts. It's a 4-hour long race through this type of crazy terrain, and let's see how many of them finished the race. All right, so here we have the final results. And remember, I said 4 hours long this took, all right? And they started with 500. Checkpoint 27, the finish, 14 riders only. That's the only riders who finished the whole thing. 14 riders. So we got Manny Lettenbichler on the KTM. He's one of the standout riders that I was talking about earlier. Billy Bolt on the Husky. Once again, crazy standout rider. Teodor Kabachev from Bulgaria on the Sherco. Mitch Brightmore from Britain on the Gas. We got Tristan Hart from Canada. He's been like doing really good in the US hard enduro series. Johnny Walker on that 4-stroke on the Triumph in 6th place, which is pretty impressive because like I said, if you look at all these bikes here, pretty much everyone's on 2-strokes. And so yeah, it's pretty impressive that he, finished out of 500 on probably, I mean, I didn't look at any of these other ones, but probably like one of the only, if not the only 4-stroke, although I do see a 450F down here. So anyway, that's pretty impressive. Then you got Mario Roman, Graham Jarvis. He's a legend. You probably heard of him. Definitely probably follow him on Instagram. Will Riordan, Alfredo Gomez Cantero, Wade Young, Matthew Green, Francesco Moret, and Dieter Rudolph rounding out the top 14. Once again, I don't know how much more I can like stress this. This race is 4 hours long, starting with 500 people, and only 14 people finish. And also take a look. The final checkpoint 27, and then nobody made it to checkpoint 26. Only one guy, David Cyprian, made it to the 25th checkpoint. We got a couple people down here on the Motor X Highway, the 22nd checkpoint. Cody Webb is, I believe, doing pretty well in the U.S. Hard Enduro Series as well. And I didn't see it yet here. I wonder if we can find Carson Brown. I'm not quite sure. Let me take a look, and I'll see if I can find him on here. 1 second. All right, so I did find Carson Brown. He went through the 13th checkpoint machine, and he went through at 3 hours and 33 minutes. And it looks like he did not complete the following checkpoint, which was checkpoint 14, Dornroschenwald. Okay, so so he made it to checkpoint 13, which is very, very impressive, I might add. So once again here, I just want to stress again how crazy hard enduro is. And so, like I said, once again, I mean, this is like the millionth time I said it. 500 riders, 14 riders finish. So that's like the hardest hard enduro event in the world, right? But I have been riding hard enduro recently, a little, if you want to call it that. It's like hard enduro light, maybe would be a better way to describe it. With my buddy, the one I was saying who did the Tennessee Knockout. and it's made me have some interesting thoughts about what bike I might want next. And so maybe we can talk about that now. So a lot of thoughts about my next bike have been kind of happening recently. It's changed a bunch. And originally at the beginning of this season, I was kind of looking into doing a bunch of racing, some sort of hybrid racing format, doing some off-road. And I was looking at different bikes. I wasn't sure what to get. I thought, hey, maybe I had a lot of motocross races on my plate. I wanted to see how I did, possibly try to qualify for Loretta's, but I didn't end up really doing any racing. But, when I thought that, I was like, okay, maybe I'll just get another motocross bike. I have a 125, and I did have a 250F, my YZ125 motocross bike, but it got stolen, which was a huge bummer because that bike is literally a motocross bike. But yeah, it just kind of got me down in the dumps. So I was like, all right, maybe I'll convert my YZ125 into like a good hybrid sort of machine for both off-road and motocross. And I was doing some more riding on my CRF, and I don't know, I was just all over the place. So until recently, I didn't really land on anything in particular. For a while, I was thinking I might want like a 252 stroke sort of, maybe a 252 stroke like cross country bike, like the YZ250F, 250X. I got the chance to ride my buddies. Two of my friends have the YZ250X, so I got a chance to ride those, and I did like them. But after a while, I sort of was like, I don't know if I really want that, because I really started to like the electric start on my CRF, and because it's the first bike I've ever had with electric start, I really started to like that. And I was like, you know what? I don't know if I want the two-stroke that's carbureted without the electric start. I don't know. I just wasn't feeling it. So kind of put the bike thoughts on the back burner. To be honest with you, I can't even afford a new bike right now, but I'm hoping by the beginning of next year, maybe I'll be in a place where I can, because I would really like to try some more advanced forms of off-road riding, and the bikes that I have right now just aren't really cutting it. The problem with the CRF is it's really good on like moderate trails that aren't too difficult, but I mean, it just tractors up some crazy hill climbs and stuff, honestly. So it's really good for that. But where it sort of starts to draw problems is it's not light at all. So places like where I get stuck on an off camber and my back wheel slides down, then I got to like get off the bike and pull it up by the fender. That starts to really wear me out, because that bike is like almost as heavy as a 450, I think. So it's just not ideal for, like woods riding or like enduro, where you need a bike to feel like kind of light, flickable, nimble, I would say. And then the 125, man, I've just been getting irritated with it. First off, it's a really old bike. It's a 2012. I guess not really, really old, but old enough to where it's had some use to it by me. It's all banged up, dented. And I've had this is a little bit of a suspicious kind of conspiracy theory brain on me, but I kind of get bad vibes from it, because I've had a couple gnarly crashes, which I'll talk about at the end of this, when I talk about my worst crashes. That was a viewer question in the Q&A portion, but yeah, I've had some gnarly crashes on that bike, and it just gives me sometimes it just gives me bad vibes. And on top of all that, it also kind of sucks for the type of riding I'm wanting to do. It has a really narrow power band at the top of the RPM range. My dad also has a 2005 YZ125 with V-Force reeds and a FMF gnarly pipe on it. And that really widens out the RPMs, or sorry, the power band. So it makes it a lot easier to lug. But I just don't really feel like doing a ton of like engine mods on the 125, because at the end of the day, even if you try to like make it work for that, it just wasn't designed to do that. And so Yes, I could spend a little bit of money and modify the bike to turn it into something that it wasn't really designed to do, but like would still kind of work. But just all those other reasons I was talking about, it just makes me feel like my heart's not really like in it. I don't think I would find enjoyment in that. I don't I don't think I would even be like content with it after I did all that modification stuff. I think I would still be kind of unhappy with it. Um so I'm kind of leaning towards something else. Now, like I said, I was thinking maybe a 252 stroke, maybe I really like the idea of the KTM sort of fuel injected two strokes with the electric start. You don't have to premix the oil. You can just, you fill up the oil reservoir and it mixes itself in the bike. You just run pump gas. It's really modern technology. If I got either the cross country 250 two stroke or the Enduro 250 two stroke, or like a 300 even, it would be really good for that hard enduro stuff. And if I got the cross country one, it would still be capable for, hitting the motocross track and that sort of thing. But I don't know. The more I've been thinking, the more I've been kind of drawn recently to the four-stroke cross-country race bikes. That would be like the YZ250FX, Yamaha, the Honda CRF 250RX. We're going to take a look at all of these bikes, and I'm going to kind of compare them just to kind of deep dive and give you a glimpse on what I do when I'm sort of like deep diving, trying to make a purchase, whether that's a bike, whether that's like my gaming PC. This is what I do with everything. So I'm going to kind of walk you through like how I do this. Plus, hopefully we'll learn something along the way, because I haven't researched all these bikes. I've only researched a couple of them. So it'll be interesting to sort of learn what's up. But I guess we should just sort of dive right into it and see what is up. Okay, so here we're on Yamaha's website for the YZ250FX. And before we like dive into the specs and all that, basically why I'm leaning towards these four-stroke bikes has a lot to do with how I feel on my CRF 250F. Now the CRF 250F is different than the next bike we're going to look at. The Honda CRF 250RX. And I've made plenty of videos about this, talking about the differences between the trail bikes and the race bikes. And you can go check those out on my channel if you want a more in-depth explanation. But I really like the fact that the four strokes are just dead simple. As far as maintenance goes, especially, there's like three things you really want to do. One is clean the air filter, which is the same on any bike. Two is going to be changing your oil at regular intervals. Usually it's like 10 hours. It can vary from bike to bike. And then the third thing is just checking your valves to make sure that they're within a certain spec, within a certain adjustment. And that's really all there is. You're not rebuilding the top end as much as you are on a two-stroke. I don't know. It just seems like they're a lot more modern. There's more things that could fail and become an expensive fix, but at the same time, riding the way I do, very casually, pretty chill. I'm not like doing anything crazy. I think I'm way closer to the average rider than like a pro, obviously. So when you're just riding a four-stroke like that, even a race spec one like this one you see here, the maintenance on it is fairly simple, especially if you just leave it stock. And like I said, you keep up on the other maintenance, like changing the oil, make sure the air filter's clean, and check the valves whenever you need to. They're supposedly pretty reliable. And I've had one before. I had the 2016 YZ250F, which is the motocross version, basically of this bike you see here. It's just a lot older. It doesn't have the electric start. But it was still fuel injected. Didn't have any of the mapping and stuff that we'll see with this bike here. But yeah, I mean, there's just something about my CRF 250F, and I think it has to do with it being like a low maintenance four-stroke that I just really like, because I just like to ride my bike more than I want to work on it. And I feel like a lot of people kind of feel the same way. So, I mean, the other thing about it is why I kind of went for these cross country bikes, and that's what I'm leaning towards, is from everything I've heard, they're not that different from the motocross version, which means if I want to go out and do a motocross race, they'll still be competitive, which is awesome because I still ride motocross and that's what I grew up riding and I love doing it. So to have a bike that is basically still at its core a motocross bike, but with all the upgrades that make it more catered to woods riding, that is really appealing to me. No, it's not going to be amazing at hard enduro, because that's not what it was designed for. But at the same time, I'm not doing all kinds of hard enduro right now anyway. And if I find myself leaning heavily into that, and that's like the only stuff I like doing, I don't like riding track at all, I don't like riding flowy single track, then okay, I might go for something like a 300 two-stroke. But for now, the type of riding that I'm doing, I think this would be the best fit, something like this. So we're going to get into the differences between, these bikes, what makes them different from a motocross bike. But I also want to just go through and kind of look at all of the different options available to me and kind of learn a little bit more, because the only ones I've really researched are this one you see here, the Honda CRF 250RX, and the Kawasaki KX 250X. Because my buddy actually just bought the Kawasaki. I haven't got the chance to ride it, but he's talked to me a little bit about it. And then my local dealership has both Yamahas and Hondas. So I have researched these ones quite a lot. But all the other ones I don't really know much about. So we're going to dive into that together. Now, I did ask GPT. I found, all the ones that I was interested in, and I had it sort of pull up a comparison chart, because I was looking at some of the websites like here, and there's a lot of different numbers and things on the screen, and I don't think that we're actually going to be able to really find a good side-by-side comparison, but it will be cool to kind of look at pictures and stuff like that. But if you want the actual side-by-side comparison, I had ChatGPT kind of like look at things that were more important to me, and we can double-check that some of this stuff is true. Like, obviously don't put your full trust in ChatGPT, but I find that it's usually pretty accurate for like pulling information off the internet. So some of the most important stuff I find is like the Yamaha. If you look at this compared to the motocross version, the fuel tank is one of the biggest differences. Now, on the KX 250X, the Kawasaki, a 1.6 gallon tank is stock. And I believe on the Yamaha, it's like a 1.7 gallon. Now, they bump it up to a 2.1 gallon, and you'll see on a lot of these, it's at least a 2-gallon tank, which for off-road riding, you're doing long enduro rides, you're doing hair scrambles that last hours and hours rather than just like a moto on an MX track. The bigger fuel tank capacity is important to have. So for me, just looking at this, the Kawasaki, I'm not really that interested in it, just for the fuel tank, because I don't really want to have to buy an Acerbis aftermarket or like an IMS aftermarket huge fuel tank. I would like it to just come stock with it, because I know I'm going to want it anyway. So that's one thing. So as you can see here, we got the Yamaha with 2.1 gallons, Honda 2.1, Kawasaki 1.6 for some reason, the KTM 2.2, Gas 2.4, Sherco and Triumph with roughly 2 gallons. Okay, so that I'm kind of saying, might scratch the Kawasaki. They all have electric start, which is great, because that's one of the main reasons that I like the newer bikes, like the newer 2-strokes and the newer 4-strokes. Electric start, it's really awesome in the woods when you're falling and getting back up and stopping and starting. It's just really nice to have. They also all have 18-inch rear wheels, which is nice because the motocross bikes have the 19-inch rear, which is great for motocross because a lot of motocross tires are 19-inch rears. But for woods riding, there's a huge range of tire compounds and tire tread patterns and just a whole giant range of tires for off-road riding that are all 18-inch in the rear. So all these bikes have a stock 18-inch rear wheel, which, once again, like the fuel tank, If I did get the motocross version, I could just buy a rear wheel setup, but I don't really want to do that. I would prefer it just to come stock because, once again, I just want to ride the bike. I don't really want to do a bunch of work on it. So moving on to the gears, we have some of these have 6-speed, some of these have 5-speed. The Triumph likely 6-speed. They don't know, I guess. I have heard that the Yamaha has a 6-speed wide ratio. So the gears are going to be a little bit wider than the MX gearbox, which just makes it a lot easier for riding in technical terrain that you would find off-road. So we got the Yamaha with the 6-speed. We got the gas with the 6-speed. Is that a KTM? Yeah, KTM, Sherco, probably the Triumph, not quite sure. This doesn't really bother me too much, although it does probably make a huge difference. It wouldn't necessarily be my deciding factor. Maybe it would be. Honestly, maybe it would be. I don't know. I'm kind of not sure on that yet. We also have engine differences. So on the Yamaha, it's got a heavier flywheel, 6-speed gearbox over the motocross bike for more bottom end torque, which is nice because for like hard enduro, that sort of thing, the heavier flywheel is going to help it keep from stalling as easy. We got with the CRF 250R X has the same engine as the R. It says light shift drum, which I have no idea what that means. Needs a flywheel weight for trail use. So, okay, interesting. The engine on the KX, nearly identical, softer suspension. That's another thing. These bikes normally have suspension more set up for woods riding or off-road, I guess, than motocross normally. So all these bikes should have suspension that is more set up for the off-road. Just going down the list, we got some more differences. Same engine internals, extra flywheel mass, different ECU mapping. I believe one of these other ones has different ECU mapping as well. We can dive into the actual website as well. I don't want to get lost in the weeds on this here, but also moving over here, I don't think some of this is right. The YZ125FX for protection and handguards, it says it has a bracket for the bash plate. I believe it comes with the skid plate. I could be wrong. Maybe the 24 didn't. No, it looks like it did too. So to me, it seems like it comes with the skid plate, although they could just be putting that in for marketing and not actually giving it to you, which would be kind of shitty. It seems like some of these come with handguards, some of them don't. So like the KTM does come with handguards, but the Japanese brands seem to not. And the price as well. So obviously KTM spending an arm and a leg. With the Japanese bikes, you're looking at $1,000 cheaper, or maybe even $2,000 cheaper with the Kawasaki, although you're not really getting not many changes from the motocross bike with the Kawasaki. So that's something to look into. So just as far as that goes, the price-wise, I'm definitely liking the Yamaha and Honda a lot. But let's take a look at the actual website and see what is going on here. So for the Yamaha 2025, we got, $9,099. It's going to bump it up another $600, and then you got your dealer fees and stuff. You're looking at right around 10 grand probably. We know all this stuff. 243 pounds, seat height 37 inches. I mean, it's fairly standard. Here's how it looks. I've heard that the air intake on these is pretty beefy. It lets a lot of air in the intake path. I'm not sure what they changed on these ones, but at least on the MX ones, I've heard those bikes are really loud because the airbox is right there under the front of the seat, like right here, if you don't know. So it's sucking all that air in, and you can hear a lot of engine noise coming from right here, which it was on my 2016 as well. That bike was just loud, which for some people they don't like it because they don't have to wear earplugs. I don't wear earplugs, but I probably should. This is something though that really intrigues me. But I'm getting really hungry right now, so I'm gonna go get a snack real quick, and then I'll join you once again to talk more about this. But I would recommend you guys get a snack and some water as well. And I'll be right back and meet you here, and we'll talk more about the traction control, launch control, mapping, all that stuff. Okay, we're back. So 2025 YZ250X key features, new for 2025. The new Yamaha Power Tuner app. Now, this is something that I don't think a lot of the other bikes have. I'm not quite sure, but I don't think they do. It's an app that you can actually control the tuning of the ECU. So I guess they revised it, made it even more user friendly. Says it has new features including an intuitive simple tuning slide bar for engine mapping, traction and launch control tuning, a lap timer, along with helpful new engine and suspension tuning guides. So I'm a huge fan of that. Okay. That sounds awesome to be able to map the bike straight from your phone and really customize it in between the maps. You don't just have a button on the handlebars. You can literally like slide it to do exactly what you want. And because this is called simple tuning, I'm guessing that they have a more advanced tuning as well. But it would be interesting to see. So I think that is one of the things that really gives Yamaha like a huge leg up. Also, traction control and launch control. It says the all-new 4-level traction control system communicates wheel slip to the ECU. So I guess it tells the ECU that the wheel is slipping, and then it tunes the engine to maintain the rear wheel's traction. And then they updated the launch control feature. So you can limit the RPM, adjust it to 500 RPM increments, yada, yada, yada. Cool. That's just stuff that I probably won't really use much. I mean, the traction control would be kind of interesting if you could probably use that to turn it into like similar thing that the CRF 250F is, like a tractor basically, if it just doesn't slip the rear wheel. So that's kind of cool. New switch gear, don't know what that is. On the fly selection between preloaded maps. Okay, so you could probably, yeah, you can load a custom map with the power tuner, and then you can switch between it on the handlebars. So there you go. Revised suspension settings. Also, Yamaha has KYB suspension, which is supposedly some of the best stuff out there. I don't know much about suspension, but from everything I've heard, the KYB suspension is very, very good. Forks have a hand adjustable knob for compression adjustments. That's cool. You don't need a tool. Just use the clickers by your hand. That's pretty awesome. Like I said, I don't know much about suspension, so I'm not even going to speculate on that stuff. But from what it sounds like, it sounds like a lot of good stuff. I mean, other stuff, I don't know. This top features, this doesn't really seem like new things. I mean, good brakes, you know. I think a lot of this stuff is things that the other bikes would have as well. Here we go. 6-speed gearbox, which it does have. Let me see if there's anything else that it has that I would really want in a bike. Okay, so this is actually something, the enhanced mass centralization. So if you look at how the bike looks, we'll find a picture here in a second. The engine, the exhaust, and the fuel tank are strategically positioned to like centralize everything on the bike. So if we can find a picture of it, it's not really an amazing picture, but the exhaust wraps right around the engine, and it's like equal on both sides, kind of. And then the fuel tank is way down here rather than like flipped. So the airbox is up here on the Yamaha. Fuel tank is right here. On other bikes, the airbox is like back on the fender here, or like the side plate. And the fuel tank is like all up here. So that kind of leans more of the weight of the fuel tank there. Whereas on the Yamaha, like everything is kind of dead center. So it makes the bike feel pretty planted, which I definitely like for sure. And then down here in the minutia, we found what we really care about, which is the cross-country features. So this is exactly what's going to be making the difference between the motocross model and the cross-country model. And this is why right here, this whole paragraph is why I would buy this over the YZ250F. So it says the YZ250FX is ready for cross-country competition straight out of the box with its electric starting system, 2.1 gallon fuel tank, wide ratio 6-speed transmission, rugged plastic skid plate, so it does come with that, 18-inch rear wheel, sealed drive chain, and high-performance Dunlop MX33 tires. Okay, whatever. Additional new features for 2025 include larger fork protectors, water-resistant PVC handlebar, okay, bar pad, okay, cool, and a seamless seat cover design. Now, I will say, I do like the seat cover on the 2025s. My buddy's YZ250F 250X has the sort of new Yamaha seat, and it's really grippy. I really like it a lot. I'm a big fan of it. So, I mean, here's some more pictures of the bike. Like I said, you can see the engine, everything's centralized there. And I'm sorry I'm diving so in depth on this one. We'll probably skim through the other ones a little bit quicker because I am taking my sweet time on this bike. But diving into the Honda, the differences were it seemed like this one was a little bit more with the 5-speed, motocross gearbox. Doesn't have the flywheel. Does it have the skid plate? It looks to me like it does not. They do have handguards in these pictures though, so they may come with handguards. Yeah, factory handguards. Showa spring fork, which also good suspension. The Showa is a good suspension. And I'm just trying to see, does it have... Let me find all the specs here that we care about. Okay, so another thing I didn't talk about was the kickstand. The bikes have the kickstand, which is pretty nice to have, pretty versatile. And then it does seem like it has the handguards that come with it. So that's pretty good. Now, it doesn't seem like it comes with a skid plate. Actually, it does, I believe, a small skid plate. So it seems like you're getting a skid plate with it as well. Now, whether it's a good skid plate, I don't know. The Yamaha one seemed to wrap farther up around. This one just seems to kind of cover small amounts of the frame, but it looks pretty good. It looks like you'd be getting a pretty decent bang for your buck if you bought this bike. Now, I do want to see if it has any information about I don't know what this is. Okay, that was just a website for like a bunch of aftermarket parts, like Honda specific tie downs and stuff like that, which I don't really care about. But this is what I was looking for. So what kind of technology does it have? It has the electric start. It has the launch control, which is similar to Yamaha's, but it seems like, and the engine mode select button, right? So it does have mapping, but it doesn't seem to me like it has like a custom mapping, like an app. So I would have to look more into it, but to me, it doesn't seem like it has the tunability that the Yamaha does. So that makes me not as excited about that bike. This one, once again, like I said, this really isn't that changed from the motocross bike, although it does say it has smartphone connectability. This one, we're talking about the KX250X, the Kawasaki, for those listening. The last bike we were talking about was the Honda CRF 250RX, for those listening. I am just getting used to doing a podcast format, so I do apologize if it's a bit confusing for those that are just listening. But yeah, so it looks like the Kawasaki does have an app. So that's pretty cool. But other than that, a lot of it really does seem very, very similar to the motocross bike. It doesn't seem like a lot is that different. Power and performance, it says it's built for cross-country domination. But like I said, what is different? So here's the app, Rideology schematic app. So you can update your engine map, which is cool. Different power modes, launch control, traction control, cross-country handling. So, suspension is set up for that. Yeah. Let's see what they have to do with power. So the engine, it does look more centrally aligned, the airbox. So that's interesting. The intake has strong low end torque, which 4-strokes have pretty good low end to begin with, but there seems like they're making it even more for the 2025 model. Efficient power. So yeah, I don't know much about engine stuff, so I can't really pretend to understand what's going on there. This one has the air filter on the side, as does the CRF. So that's something to be aware of. The Yamaha is like the only one that has it up under the top of the seat. Not much else to say about this one. Honestly, I don't think this one's really one that I would be purchasing. Now the KTM, they're 2-strokes. I understand why you would want to go with the KTM over the Yamaha, because the KTM has a lot of, the 2-stroke KTM has fuel injection, it has electric start, versus the carbureted kickstart Yamahas. So I understand that. But for the 4-strokes, I'm not really sure why you would spend the extra like $1,000 for something that's essentially going to be the same as the Yamaha. You got the WP suspension. Some people seem to like that. You have the airbox, a robust one-piece. Great, that's cool. I don't really care about that. There's only 2 things. What do we have as the third? They don't know. Can't even get there. The website's broken. Okay, so the KTM. I wasn't navigating correctly. My bad. So we're gonna keep going down. So we got more usable power. Now I will say that all the KTMs that I've rode, they've all had really linear power delivery. Linear in a way where it was pretty soft at the beginning. Now, obviously, you can change this with mapping and all that stuff. But compared to like the Yamaha, which hits really hard, any KTM I've ridden, and Hondas as well, they kind of just roll on the power. Now, I don't know if this would be the same, but it seems like it might be. And now, also, this is something I've heard about too, the quick shifter. I don't really understand how that works, but the quick shifter function means you can bang through from 2nd to 6th gear with your focus solely on the first corner. So here we go. All right, so everyone listening, this is something new that I did not know. The KTMs have a quick shifter, which I believe is different from the other bikes. So it says designed for the whole shot. The KTM 250 XCF comes standard with the launch control and the quick shifter function, which allows for fast upshifts without using the clutch. So you can upshift during the whole shot without the clutch at all. There's a quick shifter button, I guess. Maybe you hold it, or maybe you just press it to engage it. I don't know. But is that a reason that you would buy this? Like like $1,000 more than another bike? I don't know. Maybe if you're racing, but I've seen plenty of Yamahas get massive hole shots, so I don't know about that. Selectable maps and traction control. Every bike's got a map nowadays. We got some control stuff. We got ergonomics. We got fuel tank, 2.24 gallons, which I will say is the most capacity out of all the other ones I've seen here. And I don't know. The other thing is it does have a steel frame versus the aluminum frame. So the The Yamaha is going to feel a little more rigid, while the KTM will feel a little bit more flex, which some people might like. And honestly, in the woods, that might be nice because the aluminum frames might tend to like bounce around and pogo a little more. But I'm not 100% sure. Like I said, is it worth the extra $1,000? I don't know. And that's $1,000 before like the freight charges and all that shit. So who knows? Here we have the KTM Power Parts catalog. They have an app as well, but does it allow you to alter your engine? It does allow you to alter your engine behavior. So that's, so the KTM also has an app. Once again, does the Honda have an app? I didn't see one. I could be wrong, but I didn't see one. So that's the KTM. Now, interestingly, the Husky doesn't have, or at least I can't find, Husky does not make an Enduro 250 4-stroke. They have 350s. They have the 450 and they have the 501 and they have the 2-stroke 250. And they have the cross country 350 4-stroke. But I don't see a 250 4-stroke other than the motocross version. So, if you're getting the motocross version, then you're definitely going to have to do all kinds of, additions like the handguards, like the skid plate, and it's going to be basically just a motocross bike. So the suspension is going to be set up for that. So I'm not really interested in the Husky. Now the Gas allegedly does have this bike here, which is the EX250F. Once again, $10,299 base MSRP, which not very compelling when you compare it to the KTM. I guess that it is a few $100s more. However, I don't know. What does this one have that would make me want to get this over the Yamaha? And I might just be sounding like a Yamaha glazer at this moment, but I really think the Yamaha is a solid bike, and I've owned a lot of Yamahas before too. Now, if you've watched my most recent video, you'll know that I don't like blanket statements, so I am looking at different features. However, I will say I'm comfortable with Yamahas. I've never ridden a gas. Never ridden one. So once again, they're talking about the airbox. I don't give a shit about the airbox, to be honest with you. I want to know why in the hell I would buy the gas over the Yamaha. We got a subframe here, so that's interesting. The front of it is a steel frame, and then the back of it is aluminum subframe. I have no idea how that would feel, personally. WP suspension, once again, if you really like the WP suspension, that's great. The motor, I don't really know much about. The transmission, does it have a 6-speed transmission? So there you go. Does it have anything else of note? The gas seems hydraulic brakes. I'm not seeing handguards in any of these pictures, and I'm not seeing a skid plate. So, yeah, I don't know. Engine management system, seems as though we have engine mapping. Seems as though we have a sensor that cuts the ignition during big crashes. Okay, that's cool. And then plus if you install a map switch, so you have to buy a map switch and then add it later. So yeah, this seems like a KTM without standard good features. So I am not interested. Now the betas, there is a beta dealership kind of close to me, not that close, but at the same time not that far. I thought they had a 250 4-stroke, but I guess I was wrong. They have a lot of wacky sizes. They have a 430 4-stroke. They have a 480. They have a 450. They have a bunch of 2-strokes, which the 200 2-stroke kind of sounds interesting to me. I've heard a lot of good things about that. They have the legendary 300 2-stroke. And I guess if I was going to get any of these bikes, they also have a 390 4-stroke, which is weird. But they have a 350 4-stroke. And so they don't have the 250. Now, I've watched a couple of videos on people riding 350s, albeit not this bike. And apparently the 350 is great for motocross. But for off-road, I guess the 350 does pretty good on a lot of different terrain for sure. But once you get on like technical hard enduro terrain, I've heard that it doesn't really perform as well as like a smaller bike would. Now, I could be wrong. I don't have the experience to really talk about it that much. That's just what I've heard. But, and also we should probably look at the price. I don't know what the price is. Was it on my spreadsheet? It was not on my spreadsheet. Let me find the price of this real quick first before we dive into the features. So that's pretty cool. $11,000. Now it is a 350, but it's just way more than I was looking to spend. And I'm not sold on the 350 for woods riding, off-road riding. I know it's probably fine. I don't have any experience with betas either. Oh, here it was. I just had to scroll down a little bit further. But I don't know. So we see all the stats here. Is there anything that sticks out? A 2.4 gallon tank. Now that's awesome. Just a little bit more than all the other bikes. It seems dual map ignition. Not an engine legend. So is that the same as an engine map? It could be. I don't know. I think maybe not. Tell me if I'm wrong. I don't know. Maybe it's just a lack of. Oh, here we go. Map switcher on the handlebars. So you can change the mapping. So it seems very similar to a lot of the other bikes. But it's like $2,000 more than the Yamaha. And it's a 350. And I'm not super sold on that. I don't know. The Sherco, they have the 2026s out. I don't know anything about this bike at all. What I do know is that I was looking at the pictures and I see this like little catch can right there on the left side of the. Do you see what I'm talking about? Like opposite the exhaust right there. I can't hover it because it's moving my mouse, but what is that? It looks like windshield wiper fluid, dude. Why does a dirt bike have windshield wiper fluid? Maybe it's a coolant catch can or something like that. But why is it the whole way back there? I don't know. I don't understand what that is. Maybe I'll find out somewhere here. Looks sharp as shit, dude. Plus it comes with a headlight. Plus it comes with handguards. Plus it comes with a beefy looking skid plate. So sweet looking bike, man. What has it got going on? Has the KYB suspension. That's sick. It's got a 6-speed transmission. It's got a hydraulic clutch, which would be kind of nice in the woods, make it a lot less strenuous on your clutch hand, where the Yamaha doesn't. That has the, I believe it has the regular clutch. Electric start. Does it have mapping? Oh, it's carburetor electronic injection. So it is fuel injected, which I was going to say that would be weird to have a carbureted 4-stroke. Now, I don't know about it doesn't say anything about the like engine mapping. It has a digital advance CDI ignition. Let me look into that. I'm not sure if it has like an app, like I said, with the engine mapping, or if it has a map switch. Maybe we can see on the handlebars if there's a close up here. What does it have? It's looking pretty damn simple. So I don't know if it will have a map switch. Let me dive into that a little bit deeper. 1 second. So from everything that I've gathered, it seems like it does not have an app or a Bluetooth. However, it does have a factory fitted dual map switch, which means you can toggle between a smooth traction focus map or a more aggressive racetrack map. It's a simple wired handlebar switch. So I guess that is what you're getting. So it's not as intuitive with the mapping features as the other bikes. I also want to look at price. I want to see what the price is looking like. Did it say that before or did I miss it? I want to see what the price is looking like. And I also want to see one other thing that I can't remember right now. Okay, once again, ChatGPT saves the day. It says the 2026 Sherco 250 4-stroke has The MSRP around $12,000. Actual dealer prices usually range between $10,800 and $12,700, depending on location. So it's on the more expensive side. And then my other question was, what was that weird catch can looking thing right there? And it says it's usually Sherco's external breather system, EBS, featuring a catch can, which is supposed to catch oil and condensed oil and water vapor from the crankcase vent. So it helps keep the airbox and the intake cleaner, especially during dusty or humid rides. So that's very interesting. Is it necessary? I don't know. Is it another thing to break? Possibly. So I'm not quite sold on it, especially for the price tag. Plus, I have no experience with Sherco's whatsoever. Now we have this guy, the newest of the bunch, probably. I don't really know anything about this, and I don't think most people do. Does seem to come with a skid plate. By the way, I'm talking about the Triumph TF250E, which is the Enduro 254 stroke. Looks like a big ass gas tank on it. Does seem to come with handguards. Seems to come with a headlight, which is nice. Not a lot of the other ones do. Although I was looking at the cross-country models, not the Enduro models, so that could be why. Like I said, seems pretty well spec'd out here. It does have dual engine maps. It does have KYB suspension tuned for Enduro. It does have traction control, launch control, and a quick shifter. It doesn't say much else. We got the chassis, we got the suspension, we got the ergonomics. Cool, it's supposed to be balanced. I don't know. I mean, what else is there even? Agile and responsive. This is just kind of like fluff, designed for comfort. They got okay, here's a map. Here's a picture of the map switch. So we have we have an M, which I'm assuming is the map. And then we have 3 buttons, one TC, traction control probably, QS, quick shifter, and then LC, probably launch control. So there's only one map button, so you might be able to cycle through them. That's what I'm guessing. Let's check out their technology page and see what it says. Digital display for real-time data, so that's pretty cool. We got a speedometer on here. Do we have a Wi-Fi module? So there is an app. So the Triumph does have an app. Plus, before we look at that, let's check out the transmission. It is a 6-speed transmission. So that's cool. And it does have a price tag a little less than the KTM's, $9,795. Now, if we go back to the Yamaha, $700. The Triumph is $700 more than the Yamaha and has pretty much all the same features that the Yamaha has. Plus, it's newer and not as proven. In my mind, also, it's an enduro bike, not really the cross-country bike, so it might not be as set up for motocross as the cross-country bike would be. I would have to look into this a little more. Not necessarily like a horrible option, but at the same time, everything I've seen so far just kind of leads me more towards the Yamaha. The only thing the Yamaha does seem to lack is handguards stock, and it doesn't have a headlight. But if you're racing motocross and you're riding it in the daytime, you don't really necessarily need it. I don't know. The Triumph actually has me curious. I would be interested in maybe testing one out if I could, or going to looking at it in a dealership or something. Although, like I said, it's an enduro bike, not a cross-country bike. So will it be as compatible with the motocross track as something like the Yamaha YZ125 FX would be? That is not known yet. Now let's check. The only one last thing I want to see about this is the fuel capacity. Does it have the fuel capacity on here? I don't see it. Let me look a little deeper here. So I couldn't find anything on the actual site. Maybe I'm just unable to find it, but what I was seeing on ChatGPT is that it has a 2.19 gallon fuel tank. So maybe slightly bigger than the Yamaha at 2.1, but really not that much of a difference. So to be honest, the Triumph is kind of the most comparable to the Yamaha, although it looks a little bit more focused for enduro rather than cross country. So hope you learned something new with that segment. I know it went on way longer than I was sort of planning. I hope I didn't bore you too much. All right, so we're going to get into the motocross sort of season recap thus far. We just completed High Point, so we have a week off break before we go into the next round, and the season's shaping up to be pretty awesome. Let's start with the 250 class first. And I just want to look at the point standings here. First off, I've been loving watching the season this year so far. I never usually watch motocross the whole way through. I always get kind of disinterested in it. I think because there's a lot more to do in the summer, so I don't really sit down on the weekend and watch it, but that's beside the point. So, is this right? Holy shit. I didn't even realize Joe was the second in the point standings. But anyway, the 250 class point standings, we got Hayden Deegan with a huge lead. He has 194 points so far. Joe Shimoda in second with 152 points. Chance Hymas, who's been doing pretty good recently, but although I think he might have had an injury at High Point, I didn't really look into it. He's down there tied with Garrett Marchbanks at 132. Then it just goes on and on. We got Tom Vial in fifth, Levi Kitchen in sixth, Ty Masterpool seventh, Casey Cochran eighth, Julian Beaumere ninth, and Max Voland to round out the top 10. Now, I want to talk a little bit about Hayden Deegan's dominance because he is absolutely shredding. He's been doing really good thus far. Had some like dominating rides. Now, I haven't really seen anyone stand up against him really or like push back, except you would expect all these guys, right? You'd expect the guys in the top 10 to be like, giving Deegan a little bit of a run for his money. But none of them have been able to really show him much. Beaumere a little bit in Supercross, but none of these guys have really been able to do anything in motocross, except, I must say, Lance Kobush, the privateer, coming in fiery at, I believe it was Hangtown. Let's check out this video. I just want you guys to see how awesome this was. Lance Kobush, complete privateer, doesn't have the resources that Hayden Deegan has. By no means should he be pulling a whole shot and like flexing on Deegan like this, but just watch. Take a look at this. And that's just great to see. Honestly, like Deegan's obviously very talented. He's hauling ass this year, but it's nice to see someone be like, here's something back for you, because he really hasn't gotten any of that from anyone else. I will say, though, I have been watching Shimoda, and he's had a steady rise. I mean, all the way from the beginning of his career and through Supercross and everything, you've seen him, and he just gradually gets better and better, and he's gotten, a few great rides and that sort of thing. But this season, I mean, he'll have a crash. He'll be like buried in the pack. Then he'll come back up to like 5th place. And earlier, I was surprised at the fact that he was second in the points right now. He beat Hymas out. But thinking back of it, I don't know why I was surprised, because he's had super consistent results. And I think if you just give him a little more time, I think he could really have some breakout rides. Now, Deegan's got a pretty commanding lead. I don't know if it's going to be this season that something could be done about it, but damn, Shimoda is looking really good recently. Now, going over to the 450 class, we got Jet Lawrence at the top with 190, Tomac 162, AP 156, Hunter Lawrence in 4th, Justin Cooper 5th, Hampshire in 6th, which it's his first season on a 450, so that's pretty awesome. Cooper Webb back in 7th. I'll talk about that in a second. We got Jason Anderson in 8th, Savachi 9th, Jorge Prado which a lot of people were expecting maybe some bigger things out of Prado, but, unsure of how he's like in the Kawasaki, not really sure what's going on there. So that's the top 10. Now let's talk a little bit about the top 2 here. Jet Lawrence and Eli Tomac. I think that's the mashup that we've been wanting to see for so long. I'm so happy to see it. It's finally happening. Jet versus Tomac. This is like a dream season, okay? We don't have Sexton in it, unfortunately, but watching the battles between Tomac and Lawrence are just awesome. And take a look in third. Very similar to what I said about Shimoda. I think it's awesome to see AP up here. He's been putting in incredibly solid rides, and you just love to see it. You just love to see AP doing good. And I think that the same thing I said about Shimoda, I think AP has given him a little time, and I think he's going to have some breakout rides coming up. Now, I said I'd talk about Cooper Webb. It's always interesting to see after someone wins a championship, are they going to carry that momentum into the next season, coming from Supercross into the outdoors, or are they going to kind of falter and have a little bit of a slump? And it looks like Cooper Webb is sort of having that post-Supercross slump. He's been getting kind of mediocre results. It's always interesting to see, what are they going to do? Are they going to carry the momentum, or are they going to kind of peter out? So that's been interesting to see Cooper Webb just kind of have some mediocre results. But overall, it's shaping up to be a really exciting season. There's obviously quite a few more races to come, so we have that to look forward to, but it's shaping up to be a great season. So if you guys aren't watching it, you can watch it on Peacock. You can find the highlights on YouTube, but I don't know. It's just been really exciting this year. It's one of my favorite sports, probably my favorite sport to watch. Although, actually, I think I like Supercross a little better as a spectator sport at least, but Motocross is definitely up there. And then hard Enduro is soon becoming my third favorite to watch, I think. But with all that being said, we're almost to the end of this long episode of Soup's Secret Show. Like I said, I'm sorry I dragged on with the bike selection, but I just kind of wanted to give you guys a glimpse into like what I do when I'm deciding to purchase a product. If it was too boring, I hope you just skipped through it, because I don't want to bore you guys, but I do want to give you a bunch of extra content. And like I said, I just kind of wanted to share that sort of thought process with you. Now, I did ask you guys on Instagram, on YouTube, and on TikTok if you had any questions for me, and you guys did drop some really, really good questions. And I do apologize. I have not switched to the... I was playing MX Bikes, and I didn't switch the screen. So my bad for that. Sorry you guys just saw the Chrome window there for a second. But anyway, back into it. So you guys did leave me some questions here. And let me see if I can scroll down so I can see all of them while I play some MX Bikes. Just answer your questions, and then that'll wrap up the video. So the first question I got was someone from TikTok. They said, I want to get a dirt bike, but I don't come from a family that has a history of doing it. So what's the first steps, tips, or any tricks? I love your content, by the way. Thank you very much. And I did get another comment on Instagram as well. It said, never have went on a dirt bike, where to go to start. So I figured these are kind of similar questions. And honestly, it's interesting because that's kind of why I make a lot of the videos I make, because I grew up around dirt bikes and motocross and all that stuff my whole life. My dad had been riding for decades before I got started, so it was literally all around me growing up. I was always surrounded by it, so I knew the difference between a two-stroke and a four-stroke, all the little ins and outs of the sport, how the racing works and that sort of thing. And I do recognize that a lot of people don't have that. They don't have all that base knowledge. So a big thing I want to try to do with my channel and the information I'm giving out is share that with you. So it's like as if you had a family member who was into the sport that you could just go to and ask. So that's what I try to do. So if you don't have that and you've never been on a dirt bike and you don't know where to start or where to like even try it out, there are a couple things you can do. it's a little bit hard to try dirt bike riding out if you've never done it before, because there are like demo days where you can go to like, they're kind of few and far between, but sometimes dealers will put them on where, like, say for example, Yamaha brings all their bikes out to a track and they let people take them for demo rides. But like I said, if you've never ridden a dirt bike before, it would be a little sketchy to go to a demo ride and try to ride one for the first time. So I really wouldn't recommend doing that. What I would recommend is try to find someone you know, whether it's someone that maybe goes to your high school, maybe someone you work with, or if not, go to your local dealership if you have one close by. If you don't, it's even well worth a drive or travel to get to one, and then you can actually sit on a bunch of different dirt bikes, see how they feel. Like I said, if you really don't know anybody at all that has a dirt bike that would let you kind of try it out and maybe teach you how to ride, you could go to your local dealership and ask around and just tell them your situation. Say like, listen, I'm interested in getting into it, but I'm not so sure because I've never done it before. Do you know anyone, or would you possibly, like, I don't know, do you have a demo bike that I could try to learn on? For example, my local dealership has a lot of electric bikes like Surons. And honestly, I think a Suron is a great way to kind of see what the whole dirt bike thing is about without all the complicated stuff like learning how to use the clutch and that sort of thing. And I do know that my dealership does kind of allow people to do demo rides on the Surons because they're just a lot easier rather than a dirt bike with a clutch and everything. So I would try that if you can. If you have anyone that you know, an acquaintance, a friend, some far off relative, some guy down the street, whatever, that rides a dirt bike, I would just, go up to them, tell them your situation and that you're interested in getting into it, and just try that. That would be my advice. So, and one person on Instagram asked, what's the worst crash you've ever had from riding dirt bikes? So I've had a few semi-gnarly crashes. I've gotten pretty lucky as far as crashes go, though. I know there's plenty of people that ride dirt bikes that get hurt way worse than what I have, which I'm very glad that I have not experienced anything too bad. But I have had some pretty scary crashes, I will say. Three different crashes come to mind for me. One was very recent. I actually made a whole video on my channel about it. You can go check it out. It's when I broke my finger. This was like last year. I was on my 125. I was riding in the woods, and I didn't have handguards on. I don't know how much they would have helped, probably at least a little bit, but I ended up hitting a tree, and what happened was the clutch lever actually pressed the whole way back to the handlebar, and it just snapped my ring finger like against it. So that was like probably my worst injury, maybe. Like I said, I know people have broken, their legs and their spine and stuff like that. So I know I've definitely got off lucky as far as crashes go riding dirt bikes. But that probably wasn't even my scariest crash. There's two crashes that come to mind when I think about sort of the scariest crashes I've had. One didn't really result in injury, but it resulted in a lot of damage to the bike. Well, honestly, not that much damage, but some major damage to the bike. And another one did result in injury. So I'll talk about that one last. The first one, I also told this story on my channel in one of the videos. I think it was the video where I talked about racing and my sort of history with racing dirt bikes. But I was at this track called Pleasure Valley, and I was racing. It was like my first race. I believe it was my first race on my 125. So I had just moved up from an 85 to a big bike, and I was on the 125. And the class that I chose to run was Schoolboy 1, I believe. Can't remember if it was Schoolboy 1 or Schoolboy 2. But for whatever reason, on that day, there was like nobody else in my class. So I was the only one running the class. So they put me in a moto with the 25 plus class. So they had schoolboy 1 or 2 or whatever it was. I think it was schoolboy 1 lined up with 25 plus, and there were probably like maybe 4 other guys in that class. I can't really remember. It was between like 1 other guy and like maybe 4 other people. So it was a very small gate. So they dropped the gate. I'm going around. I'm getting absolutely whooped because remember, I'm like an average rider, and it was my first time on the big bike as well. So I wasn't doing too hot. So I was getting absolutely demolished, and I was way back at the back of like the pack. Wasn't even close to anybody. Coming around for the finish, like completely last place, and there's this huge downhill, like a big valley right before the finish line. It goes down this hill, back up again, and to the right for like a small little finish line jump. So I'm like, home stretch. I can see it coming. I'm like, thank you. I'm about to be done with this race. Can't wait. And I'm just trying to get to the finish line as fast as I possibly can. So I just like hold it wide open down this valley, down into this hill. And I got head shake so bad. The handlebars started like violently shaking back and forth. I swapped one way, swapped the other, fucking slammed, excuse my language, slammed like super hard onto the ground. I ended up completely fine. Like I was unscathed physically. My bike was pretty bent. Like I'm pretty sure that's the crash that bent my subframe, and it definitely cracked. I had a leak in my one radiator and it bent the crap out of my other one. So damaged the bike pretty good. And also the biggest thing that it hurt was it embarrassed me so bad, dude. Like because I was the very last person on the track, it felt like the whole world was watching me. It was just so embarrassing to like not even make it to the finish line, just have this absolutely gnarly crash after getting completely whooped too. Yeah, that was like definitely one of my worst crashes. And then my scariest crash where I got injured was also when I had kind of first moved up to the 125. It was in the winter, but sort of in the winter when the weather was like rideable. I don't know. Every year in Pennsylvania, it like the winters seem to be getting pushed further and further back, like into March, which is strange. So like in December, it's weird. Like the track will actually be like perfect conditions. So I was riding at my track, and my buddy was there. It was just me and him, and my dad and his dad were like watching us, I think. And there's a reason that I don't fully remember exactly how this went, and you'll find out soon. But I was riding, and I remember the conditions were good on most of the track, but there was this one spot up at the top of the hill where there was like this puddle, and it was like kind of in the shade, so there was still a little bit of snow there. And so it was like slushy, wet sort of snow type stuff. So I was coming around, and there's basically a series of these 2 like step down doubles. So basically you just come out of the turn, and there's quite a bit of run. You can get into like 3rd gear, pick up some pretty good speed, and then you just jump down these like ski jump doubles downhill. So I'm going across, and I hit that puddle, and all of a sudden it kicks my back end of the bike out to the side because of the slippery like slush puddle. And I was in like 3rd gear holding it wide open, unfortunately right at the top of where I would go off the lip of that ski jump. So I hit the ski jump like basically completely sideways. Once again, same sort of thing. I was holding it wide open, swapped one way, swapped the other, slammed to the ground. This time though, at the moment, first off, everything went like slow motion for me when I went off the jump, because I was carrying a lot of speed, and in my mind I'm like, oh snap, here it goes. And it's one of those moments, like I said, where everything just slows down and you can see every like detail of what's going on. So I'm like, what I remember is like in slow motion, just inevitably coming closer and closer to the ground, about to crash really hard. Like I said, I like swapped one way, hit the bank, swapped back to the other side, and once again just slammed to the ground. And I remember nothing after that. I just remember laying on the ground and looking up at the sky and like blinking my eyes, and then hearing the footsteps of my friend's dad, running over to me and like asking if I was okay. And I don't know how long I had been like passed out for, but wasn't super long. It was pretty brief, but I was like completely knocked out. And after I got up and whatever, like I had a bruise on my hip, but other than that, I felt fine. And I was like, I don't really. My parents were telling me like we should go to the ER. Like I don't really feel. I feel completely fine. Like I don't really want to go to the ER. So ultimately, my mom did convince me to go, and I'm glad I did because I ended up having a concussion. Now they told me, interestingly, that it was actually like a not as severe of a concussion. Probably, and I don't know if there's any validity to this. I'm not a doctor, but I think I remember them telling me it wasn't as severe because I had passed out. So like blacking out is kind of your brain's way of preserving itself in a way. If you guys know anything about neuroscience or whatever, just feel free to chime in. I don't. And also I had a concussion at the time they told me that, so I could be misremembering it. But yeah, that was probably like one of the worst crashes I've ever had. And luckily, I don't think I have many lingering symptoms from the concussion, but I'm honestly not sure because it's hard to tell with those sorts of things, and especially since I only have ever had one concussion that I know of, but I've been riding for like 20 years and I've definitely had some hard hits. So it's like I said, I felt completely fine after that, and I was even content on not going to the hospital. But I can imagine that there probably are other times where I've probably crashed and maybe gotten a similar thing happen to me. Now, obviously, I didn't pass out, but you can get a concussion without fully blacking out. So, I don't know, just food for thought. I don't know. Who knows? It could be affecting my mental state even now. Now we know a lot more research with like CTE and everything. And just the fact that they're kind of hard to detect and they're easily undetectable. Yeah, I'm not sure. And that's what makes concussions pretty scary. So if you ever hit your head, definitely, for one, make sure you get a new helmet after that. Don't use the same one. And then also, if it's bad enough, even if you don't feel hurt, I would definitely recommend at least getting it checked out by someone. Now, you don't necessarily have to do the whole CAT scan, but at least have someone monitoring you, making sure you don't show any symptoms of concussions, so that you can quickly, take action if you need to, because they're no joke, dude. The symptoms long term are not very pleasant. So, great question. Those are probably my worst crashes. The next question I got was, can you use regular oil on foam filters? So I assume they're talking about air filters. And I might be talking about out of my ass here. I'm not a mechanic. So you might want to go fact check this on your own. I have not Googled it, but I would highly recommend that you do Google it. But from my understanding, I don't think you can just use regular oil, like engine oil, on a foam air filter. Now, would it physically work? Probably, maybe. But long term, it might degrade the filter. And also, it probably won't work as well as specifically designed foam air filter oil will work. That stuff is meant to be like tacky and collect all the random little dust particles. And I just don't think regular engine oil would do the trick. Now, like I said, I could be wrong. I would recommend you Google that, do a little more research. But from my understanding, you can't just run like regular engine oil on your filters. Next question is, what tire models are best for trail riding, and what tire pressure is best for trail riding? So tire models, it's all going to depend on the terrain you're riding. So my advice would be either go to your local dealership and see what type of tires they carry. Better yet, ask them what they would recommend. Or if you don't have a dealership nearby, just go on whatever website it is you shop from If you do shop on Motorsport, be sure to use the link in the description, and you can buy from my link. But, just find whatever tire set is, either on sale or whatever you want to do, however much research you want to do. And just look at, if it's Dunlop, for example, take a look at their whole tire lineup. And there will usually be some sort of explanation as to, whether this is good for soft terrain or hard terrain or off-road or motocross. And, think about what kind of riding you're doing and then match the tire up to that. Because when you say trail riding, that could literally be anything. That could be trail riding in the desert. That could be trail riding in the Pacific Northwest and, with a bunch of roots and rocks and slippery stuff. That could be trail riding in sand or hard pack or what. You get the point. So it's hard for me to say like what's the best tire compound for trail riding, because trail riding is such a broad term. So go on the tire manufacturer's website and try to figure out what each tire is meant for and then match it to the terrain that you're riding, because that'll be your best bet. The next thing I have to say is for the tire pressure, once again, that's kind of a feel thing. The manufacturer will probably give a recommended tire pressure to run. You can also Google it for your specific bike or terrain you're riding. But once again, just like tire compound, tire pressure changes drastically depending on how much traction you need to get, what the surface is like, all that stuff. There's so many variables, so it's really hard for me to say, one good answer for you. So that would be my answer for the tire spec, like tire pressure and best tire models. The next question is, any advice for someone thinking of starting a TikTok, Instagram, or YouTube channel? What did you do to build your audience and get the growth you have so quickly? What did you struggle with? So this is a great question, and I've gotten this question quite a bit as well. And often what I do, usually it's YouTube specific, because that's what I've been doing the longest and that's what I've had the most success on. But for YouTube, what I often say is the number one thing to focus on is video packaging. You won't have success on YouTube if you're not good at packaging your videos. And what I mean by packaging is the title and the thumbnail. This is key. You'll see a lot of people complaining about clickbait, and I hate to say it, but that's just part of the game. Unfortunately, you need to get people in the door watching the videos. And then once they're in, they'll see whether or not it's a video they want to watch or not. But if you don't get them in the door, it's all over. It's not going to work. So title and thumbnail on YouTube is a must. Now on other social media, it's not as necessary, like short form content, definitely not as necessary. But for long form YouTube, that is something you need to study, learn how that works. But going a little more philosophical, this is something that I recommend everyone watch, and it'll be linked in the show notes below. It's a video by Doug, who is a streamer, I believe, and it's on his third channel called Doug. And it's like an hour and something long video, extremely long, and it's just his guide for new content creators. This thing is pure gold. It's filled with so much great information for people just getting started, and it really will help you find sort of your voice and your mix of skills that you're really good at. And that's extremely important because your audience will connect with you way more when you do that. If we're looking at YouTube, like what I said, getting people in the door, once you got people in the door, you gotta keep them there. You gotta make them actually want to be in your house, right? Like if people come in and it stinks like garbage, I'm doing a weird analogy here, but your house smells like garbage. It has clutter all over the floor. It maybe has weird lighting. You got some creepy shit laying all over the place. They're not going to want to stick around, right? So you want to make your house presentable, but also inviting, cozy, whatever it is that you're going for, but you want people to enjoy being there, right? And it's the same thing with your content. Now, whether that's short form, I guess for short form, instead of packaging, you're going to want to focus on hooks. So, but after you got the hook and you got people in, you want your personality to shine through, and you want your like skill mix, the things that you're good at, to shine through. And in Doug's video that I'll have linked, honestly, if you're even thinking about this, you must watch that video, because it's exactly what I did. I followed it to the T, and it helped me get my stuff to where it is today. And it's not just that I grew a bunch of, a huge audience or something. It's that the audience is awesome. I mean, you guys are like a community, especially obviously if you're watching to the end of this, like, you're part of a community, and I appreciate you being here, and it's you guys that make the community what it is just as much as I do. So the only way I would have been able to do that was if I found a way to make my community approachable, inviting, warm, welcoming, all those like attributes that make people want to stick around. So in order to do that, Doug makes a really good guide. So I highly recommend that. The next question is, do you own a road bike or plan on owning one in the future? Now, I think they mean a street like motorcycle, not like a cycle, like a bicycle. I do not own a street motorcycle anymore. I used to own a DRZ 400 Super Moto, which a lot of people would say is just a dirt bike, bro, but it was street legal. It was plated for the street, and it has street tires. And I rode it on the street. So if you want to see the first couple of videos on my channel, if you scroll way back, you'll find videos about it. But I actually traded it in for the CRF 250F. Right now, I'm not super interested in street bikes. However, maybe sometime down the road, I would consider getting another Supermoto again, maybe trying to learn wheelies and ride around with some buddies and stuff. I've recently made a friend who has a Supermoto. So yeah, it might be in the cards in the future, but nothing soon. Nothing. No plans to get another street bike like anytime extremely soon, I guess. The next question is, hey Soup, I wanted to ask you about what 85 I should get and want to start racing. I've heard that the KTM is the best choice because they require less maintenance, but I wanted to see what you thought on it. Unfortunately, I haven't done the same type of research that I've just done with you guys on cross-country bikes on the 85s. So I don't know specific differences between specs and that sort of thing. However, what I would recommend to you is, I'm assuming you mean you're going to be racing motocross, but even if not, if you're going to be racing hare scrambles or woods or whatever, look to see whatever type of racing you're doing, look to see what a lot of other people run, and if you know them, ask them why. And if you don't, just keep it in mind. If you see a lot of KTMs, if you see a lot of Yamahas, just whatever brands you're seeing, bikes you're seeing, just do what I did earlier and go on Google, ask ChatGPT, what are the pros and cons of this bike? How does it compare to that bike? Go on the manufacturer's website and look at them. Think about what features it is that are important to you for your type of riding, and you can pretty easily figure out like what bike you want, and like also price. Like, is price important to you? That's going to be a big factor as well. So basically, I hate to say this, it's kind of a non-answer to the question, but definitely do your own research. But that's how I would go about it. I would go feature by feature, not just like, oh, this brand is good because people say. That would be my recommendation. The next question is, what's a video that you haven't made yet that you're really excited about? That one's easy. I've been wanting to do a camping video for so long. I think dirt bikes are awesome, and I think camping is awesome. These are two things I really enjoy. And I've been wanting to make a freaking moto camping video for so damn long, but I've never gotten around to it. So a camping video is one I'm very excited about. That was a crazy crash. Next question. This is the second to last question if you're getting bored. What thoughts on the Minecraft movie? I didn't watch it. I heard a lot about it. I heard about people throwing stuff in the theater, being wild. I didn't watch it. So unfortunately, I don't really have thoughts on the Minecraft movie. And last but not least, what is the best 50cc in Europe? Now this is a heavy hitting question. I don't know the answer to that. And I'm sorry, I don't live in Europe. once again, similar to the 85 question, man, it's been so long since I've been on a 50. I couldn't tell you what bikes there are and what is good about each one unless I did a whole like another hour-long segment of research. So once again, I would recommend you sort of look that up. What I will say, though, is interesting is I've been hearing that in Europe, I don't know if this is for off-road bikes or street bikes only, but I've been hearing that depending on your age, you're like limited to how big of an engine you can ride, like legally. And I think, like I said, I think it applies to street bikes. But if you're young, you can only ride like a 125cc, or maybe it's a 50. And then you got to move up, or you're able to move up like when you're older. So you have to be like 30 or 40. I could be wrong about the numbers, but you got to be like 30 or 40 years old before you can ride like a actual sport bike, like a leader bike, which is kind of interesting. So I wonder if you asked that question because you're just like a kid who's actually riding a 50, or if because you're asking about Europe, maybe you're trying to ride on the street and you want to know what is the best 50cc for the street. Unfortunately, I don't got that answer for you, man. I just learned about that whole thing recently. If that's the case, with the street thing, if that's not the case, it's been so long since I've been on a 50, so I don't know what to tell you. What I do know is, same way I did my research, go and do your own. Holy crap. We got 1 hour and 40 minutes on the clock. I hope that was enough content for you guys. That's going to be it for today's show. You can find me on YouTube, Instagram, and TikTok. I just started the TikTok, so go follow me on there. And as well as right back here on Patreon for next week's Soup's Secret Show. Yeah, that's the one. So don't tell anyone.